Purdue will win decisively on Thursday in Tuscaloosa. Find out why they beat the Tide.
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I am your host. I am Nick Arvin. We have an exciting episode of Locked On Boilermakers coming your way today on this Monday. We're going to talk all about Alabama, what they bring in, and why I believe Purdue will beat Alabama, and they're going to beat them decisively. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the effect that TKR has coming back, hopefully healthy for Tuscaloosa on Thursday. We'll finish off today's episode talking about the game over the weekend, Purdue versus Ohio State, how that one played out, in my overall takeaways going into the end of football season. We'll talk about all of that, but today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. So let's go ahead and jump right into things today. Let's talk about Purdue versus Alabama and why I believe that Purdue will beat Alabama. And this goes back a little bit back. This goes back about a month when we did our scheduled prediction show here on Locked On Boilermakers. This is Purdue's first real test on the year. They travel into Tuscaloosa after facing off against Evansville and Oakland in the first two games. Alabama, after beating St. John's over the weekend, will likely be a top 10 team when the poll comes out later today. There's a lot of anticipation surrounding this matchup. There has been for quite a while. It's a home and home. We played last year, and Purdue, they beat Alabama, albeit at home in Mackey. This year, it's a whole different ball game in Tuscaloosa. It's going to be a different feel, a different environment. But preseason, I said that I expected Purdue to come into this environment and kind of dominate against the Crimson Tide. Because in my opinion, Purdue is a much better team than they were last year. And Alabama, in my opinion, is a worse team than they were last year. You think about it, losing Grant Nelson, losing a guy in Diabate, losing a guy in Mark Sears. Those are really key players that started last year for Alabama. And for them to not have those guys, it kind of gave me the concern that maybe Nate Oates' team wouldn't be as good as they have been in past years. Maybe they wouldn't give Purdue the test that they gave them last year at Mackey. But as I said, this weekend, Alabama proved that is not the case because they went in and they beat St. John's. And not only did they beat St. John's, the final score was pretty close, but overall, I thought that Alabama kind of dominated this game, to be honest, and they showed a lot of potential for what they can be this year. And if you're a Purdue fan going off, Purdue kind of struggling against Oakland, it would be easy to see why a lot of people may say, well, Alabama has shown that they're the better team so far this year. They should beat Purdue. But to that I say, let's not jump the gun. Let's provide some context between Alabama's win, why Purdue struggled, and I'll provide for you guys the context as to why I think that Purdue is not really going to struggle against Alabama, why I think they will be the better team and beat Alabama on Thursday. So Alabama, they did have a nice win against St. John's. It was a game that ended 103-96. And that's a really quality win, beating a top 5 team really soon into the season in just your second game to improve to a 2-0 record. It was an impressive win for the Tide, and I'm not trying to take anything away from them in this one. However, the fact that they were able to beat St. John's and the fact that Purdue came a little bit close in that game against Oakland. However, Purdue shot the ball surprisingly better from 3 than Alabama did against St. John's, was really surprising to me. This was Alabama's better three-point shooting game out of the year against St. John's, and they only shot the ball at 31%. Purdue against Oakland in a game where they struggled, they shot the 3 ball at 37%, and they shot it much better against Evansville. You have to look at those numbers. You have to look at the fact that Alabama is not a good three-point shooting team so far this year. Yes, they have plenty of talented guards who we'll talk about, but they're only shooting the 3 ball at 30% this year. They got it done. They got it done against St. John's. So obviously they're able to be more dimensional than just a three-point shooting team. However, that's a number that you got to look at. That's a number where when Alabama, they shoot the ball at a very high volume, 35 shot attempts from three, only making 11 of them. That's not a good number. When you put that up, you should expect to lose more times than you don't with that amount of volume, missing that many shots. But Alabama, they were able to succeed against St. John's, and the reason they were able to do so was the turnover numbers. The points off turnovers was the difference in this game. Alabama, they beat St. John's by 7. They won that points off turnovers differential by 12 points. They forced 12 turnovers compared to only 7. That was the difference. And when we think about where Purdue is going to be better than Alabama, I think that we look at those two categories. Alabama being a great team at forcing turnovers. Purdue is one of the best teams. They have the best point guard in the nation that doesn't turn over the ball at a very high level. This team is going to take a lot of control over the ball. They're going to be very intelligent with what they do because you do have that high IQ point guard. You have those veterans in your 3 seniors on the floor. This team is very talented. Even against Oakland, they only turned the ball over 5 times. So that's something that maybe Alabama was able to do against St. John's. I don't think they're going to be able to find that success against Purdue. I just don't. I think that Purdue is more experienced than what St. John's showed up with, where they turned the ball over enough to give up 19 points. I don't see Purdue doing that. And to add to my point, I think that Purdue is going to outshoot Alabama. I think they're going to make not just more three-pointers than Alabama. I think that they're going to shoot at a much higher efficiency because although Purdue shot 37%, which is higher than Alabama's average against Oakland, that was an off night for Purdue. And everyone could tell it. Campy at Oakland, they run that zone. And when those three-point shots weren't going, Purdue continued to struggle because that zone just kept getting hotter and hotter with every missed shot. Against Alabama, I don't know if you struggle in the same way. I do think that it's going to be a little bit more difficult for Purdue this year to shoot the 3 ball on the road. However, I think that this team will be motivated enough going into this game. I think that we will have all of our players healthy. I think that this team is going to want to bounce back after not a great performance against Oakland, although they get the win. And I honestly think that Purdue shoots higher than 40% at Alabama, which if they're able to do that, that gives you the numbers, in my opinion, to outscore Alabama, who they bring in one of the hottest offenses in all of the nation. I'm not discounting who Alabama can be, what they are. However, I think that everybody is over-exaggerating to the first 2 games of the season. Yes, Alabama has a very quality win in terms of beating St. John's. And yes, Purdue struggled against Oakland, but Trey Kaufman-Renn was not playing. He is a potential All-American this year. That is a big guy who was not playing. Additionally, those first 2 games, it's hard to really tell because that's not a big test for Purdue. I'm not saying that they should have underplayed Oakland the way that I think they did. I don't think that they played to their full potential against Oakland. And maybe they underestimated the Grizzlies, but they absolutely cannot underestimate the Crimson Tide. And I don't think that they're going to. I think that this is going to be a very focused Purdue team. And I think that they're going to take advantage of Alabama in a lot of places. I really do believe that Purdue will go into this game. They will have the advantage and they're going to take advantage, not just in terms of winning the turnover battle, but shooting the ball at a higher clip from 3. I think that gets it done. And the last thing that I want to hit on in terms of where I think that Purdue can beat Alabama at is that center spot. So Alabama and Purdue, a lot more similar than what people think in terms of what kind of centers they bring in, because both these teams bring in starting centers that were transfers. For Alabama, they bring in a Florida State transfer and Taylor Bull Bowen, and he's pretty good for him. He had 17 points and 9 rebounds against North Dakota. He kind of struggled in his first game, but he's averaging 12.6 rebounds. I think that Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson, you need to take advantage of Taylor Bull-Bowden because you have more depth having two guys with very versatile skill sets. Alabama, they flat out rebounded North Dakota. I'm not worried about that. I don't think that says a whole lot about Alabama because North Dakota is 350th out of 365 teams in defensive metrics. Not worried about that. They had the same rebounding metrics as St. John's, who they don't have the best center spots in the nation. I think that Alabama can be out-rebounded. I think that if you're Purdue, if you can out-rebound Alabama, if you can shoot the three ball at a higher clip, there is no way that you don't beat Alabama. And that's why I'm saying that Purdue is going to beat the Crimson Tide, and they're going to beat them pretty decisively on Thursday. Stick with us here on this next segment. We're going to talk about Trey Kaufman-Renn, what he brings to this team, potentially going to be healthy against Alabama. That's what most people think. Stick with us. We're talking TKR here next. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait because Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long with up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. I love using Wayfair because I can get whatever I need and very seasonal. Haven't gotten to Christmas yet, but I got a lot of fall decor with our friends at Wayfair, and you can too. Don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now and shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com, and that sale ends December 7th. People have been very critical of Purdue's first two performances of the year. But what people have to realize is that Purdue had a potential All-American out in those two contests. Trey Kaufman-Renn was not playing against Evansville, nor did he play against Oakland. And it really showed, in my opinion, because especially against Oakland, where Purdue really struggled to buy a basket at a lot of times, they didn't shoot the most efficient in the world. And we talked about how that kind of contributed to what Oakland wanted to do defensively. I think TKR completely flips that game on its head. TKR, his ability to buy a basket whenever necessary, that bails teams out whenever they're not able to shoot the three ball at a very high level. That one-dimensional offense was kind of what Purdue struggled with, where when the shots weren't falling, they weren't able to get anything done because of the zone that Oakland was able to run. So shots continue to not fall. That momentum kind of hurt Purdue in that one, and they were off to a sluggish start. Yes, they pulled it out. They were able to bang down those threes towards the end of the game, but it would have been very convenient to have a guy like Trey Kaufman-Renn to help get you a basket earlier in the game. And against a team like Alabama, I think that TKR is going to be really in his environment. I think that he's going to shine if given the opportunity to play against the Crimson Tide. And I want to preface this by saying I am no doctor. I am not going to be able to give you 100% accurate information when it comes to the health field. However, from what I've seen from history in terms of how these guys have sat out in these early moments in terms of college basketball, I do believe that TKR will do everything in his power to play against Alabama. And I think that the fact that we haven't heard anything worse about TKR pretty much confirms that he will be playing against Alabama, because the way that this injury has really been made out to seem the first two contests is that it's been out of an abundance of caution that TKR, he has a little bit something wrong with his hip, nothing too crazy that's going to affect him long term. However, out of an abundance of caution, Purdue, they decided to keep him out of these first two exhibitions but first two regular season games against not the two highest quality opponents, because you think you have that margin of error. Against Alabama, this is a really big matchup, a potential top 10 matchup. You don't have that margin of error. TKR, if you're able, he's going to play. He's a competitor. He's a dog. He's not going to want to sit out against a team like Alabama. So when you bring in a guy like TKR compared to what you were running, I think that completely changes the identity of what this team is. We talked about rebounding a little bit earlier in the show about how I think that Purdue, yes, they didn't necessarily rebound the best, but against Alabama, the rebound opportunities will be there. I know that Purdue didn't capitalize the first 2 games, but with Trey Kaufman-Renn back, I do think that that gives you a better opportunity to rebound the ball at a higher level with 2 really quality bigs. I'm not saying that Jack Bitter's not quality, but at 6'6", he's not going to be as good of a rebounder as Trey Kaufman-Renn. That's what he really provides you, giving you that 2 big lineup where you can rebound the ball at a little bit of a better clip than how you did the first 2 games. What I want to say is that I don't think that Purdue should be judged off of their first 2 games because TKR is such a big piece into the puzzle of what this Purdue team is going to be. They've really crafted the lineup around him, especially in the past couple years with Zach Edey gone. Really has been crafted around him. Braden Smith being able to pass the ball to him down low and get a basket. It means way more than what people understand. And when that guy isn't on the floor, you don't necessarily see the effect he has. But when you see the stats after the game, the rebounding numbers, whenever you're not making those threes, you can't get that efficient inside basket. You can kind of tell that this team would be much better, much more efficient with Trey Kaufman-Renn. And that's another reason why I do believe that Purdue is going to beat Alabama in this game, because people are underestimating what Purdue is going to be. I mean, ESPN, they have Alabama winning this game, which is flipped from where it was to start out this year. Their matchup predictor, which doesn't really mean anything. They have Alabama at 60%, Purdue at 40%. That's changed because TKR hasn't been playing for Purdue. Everybody is judging this Purdue team off a product that was without a potential All-American, a product without an All-Big Ten guy. That's not fair. You can't judge this Purdue team based off a lineup that wasn't completely healthy, that was missing one of the top 2 guys on this lineup. So I just want to provide for you guys the context behind what this team is going to have going into Alabama, the optimistic trajectory of TKR, and why he really boosts the ceiling for this team, why he boosts the potential for what this team can be. It happens on the offensive side of the ball. And I know a lot of people look back to that Kentucky game where Trey, he was playing in that 2 big lineup. It looked a little bit clunky. However, Kentucky is a very talented, a very athletic team. And I'm not saying that Alabama is not that, but it's not fair to say that Trey Kaufman-Renn is not going to have success alongside Oscar Clough just because it didn't work out perfectly the first time we saw it in an exhibition against Kentucky in the month of October. Right. That's kind of where I'm at with things. I think that TKR changes the trajectory of where this team is at exponentially. And I think that if we see him potentially, probably going to see him against Alabama, really going to show out. I think he's going to thrive in that environment. He averaged 20 points. I think he's going to go for more than that. Last year against Alabama, Braden Smith and TKR, they averaged out 40 points in that game. They both had 40 combined. I think they do something similar. Alabama, they have a ton of guards. They have guys that they really, really love, and guys that kind of sort of to Purdue, very similar in the fact that they've grown those guards. Of course, everyone knows about the marquee guy and Philon Jr., who he's averaging 23 points on the year, which is absolutely insane. But Alabama has more. They have Aiden Holloway, who also had 20 points against St. John's. And then they had a guy who came off the bench against St. John's, Latrell Wrightsell. That's the name I was looking for. He had 17 points in 22 minutes. He was a guy that was at Alabama last year as well. I remember he played quite a few minutes against Purdue in that game. Alabama has plenty of talented guards. They have plenty of guys that can hurt you. You got to keep the ball out of their hands. If you're Purdue, I expect that if you want to win this game, you get it done low to start, because then that 3 ball is going to start to open up. When you have that multi-dimensional offense with Trey Kaufman-Renn, able to get whatever floater he wants down low, and he's able to get inside the basket. You have Braden Smith driving, getting the ball to TK. It opens up way better looks from 3 that maybe Purdue didn't have against Oakland, maybe Purdue didn't have against Evansville. I'm not saying that Purdue performed to the level that they should have in those 2 games, but what I am saying is that the fact that people are saying that Alabama should be favored in this game against Purdue because of the way that these 2 teams have played through 2 games is completely unfair, because the effect TKR has on a game it really can't be measured unless he's playing, unless he's stuffing the stat sheet, because this guy is elite. This guy has proven for 4 years at Purdue that he can change games. I expect him to change this game against Alabama, and we're going to be talking about it all week. But next, we got Ohio State, Purdue. It happened over the weekend. Purdue weren't able to get it done, but there were some positives, some stuff that we can take away. We're going to have that. Stick with us. We're talking Purdue and Ohio State next on Locked On Boilermakers. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head on over to FanDuel.com and sign up to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On Boilermakers, and I want to thank you guys once again for making Locked On Boilermakers your first listen today, and thank you guys for making the Locked On Network the #1 sports podcast network. Over the weekend, of course, #1, Ohio State traveled into West Lafayette to welcome the Purdue Boilermakers, or other way around, Purdue welcomed the Ohio State Buckeyes. And this one, I think everybody kind of knew. Purdue, they were a little bit outmatched in this one by the guys coming from Columbus, because Ohio State, they are the #1 team in the nation. Purdue is yet to win a conference game, and it's kind of looking slim now because there's only 2 games left. Purdue, they did not win against Ohio State. They lost by 24, but overall, it was kind of an impressive loss, I'd say, as impressive as a 24-point loss is. Ryan Brown did not play good football. I'll start out with that. Purdue, they led 3-0 at the end of the first quarter, but Ryan Brown, he ended the game 76 yards, 1 interception. And my takeaway, and this is the main takeaway from this game, is when are we going to see Malachi Singleton? What is wrong with Malachi Singleton to the fact that we have not seen him, especially when Ryan Brown is playing poorly? Because I've been Ryan Brown's biggest advocate at times. I think that he's ultra talented, but he ultimately hasn't put in Purdue in position to win games this year. We know this. So why hasn't Malachi Singleton been given a chance? And the only answer that I can kind of think of is that Barry Odom has already guaranteed Ryan Brown a position as the starter back on this team next year. That's what comes to my mind, because there's no way that these 2 quarterbacks stay on this roster. At least one of them is leaving after this season, whether it's Singleton, whether it's Brown. We'll see. But I think that there's no way that Malachi Singleton stays. He hasn't been given a single opportunity. He's played here and there a couple snaps, but never really given a full opportunity. And I wish that we would have seen him more this year, because I think that there is potential in a guy like Singleton who, he's played, he showed some ceilings. He also has shown some floors, but like I said, hasn't been playing consistently enough for us to really kind of put a grasp on how good is a guy in Malachi Singleton. And now it's like you're almost pushing him out by not giving him an opportunity. So it looks to me like Ryan Brown is the future at quarterback for Purdue, which, if you have that much faith in him that you don't even want to give a guy in Singleton, who comes from an SEC school, an opportunity, you have to have the faith that he's going to be a top 7 guy in the Big Ten next year. And I don't know if I have that level of faith in Ryan Brown. So that's what stuck out to me mainly, was just the quarterback situation, how it's managed. It's really interesting where Barry Odom puts these 2 guys, because with 2-8, it's almost like you don't really have a whole lot to lose. But I guess we'll see if Malachi Singleton plays more against Washington. I thought Antonio Harris was good. He only had 13 carries. The 3.5 average isn't the best, but overall, Antonio Harris, he's been impressing. He just didn't really break one long, but Ohio State, their front 7 is elite. I think that Harris is the running back of the future. I don't know if we talked about this on the show or not, but Devin Mockabee officially no longer going to play for Purdue. He blew out his knee, got hurt, and his Purdue collegiate career is over. Antonio Harris kind of picking up the reins from Devin Mockabee. I expect us to see a lot of success out of Antonio Harris going into the future, and I certainly hope that we do out of Mr. 22. He's going to be good one day for Purdue. He's good now, but I think that there's a lot of potential, like I said, out of that guy. And then CJ Nunnally, who's been really good, surprisingly good this year for Purdue. He had an interception in this game. One of the other surprise things where a defensive lineman gets an interception for you. Yes, you lose against Ohio State, but it's a little bright spot that CJ was able to get that done. The senior, just a fun moment. Yes, Julian saying he was great in this game. I can't really harp on him too much, but it was just a fun moment that CJ was able to get that interception. Purdue, they weren't able to get a win. They weren't able to really stay competitive after that first quarter, but it was a little bit of a silver lining. There were some things that you could look at and say, hey, maybe going into next year, if we can keep some of these guys, if we can grow some of these guys, maybe Purdue will have a better football team. But ultimately, some things need to be done this offseason. Transfers need to be gotten. People need to be developed. This program really needs I hate to say culture shift, because that's what we thought we got with Barry Odom. But when you're looking at potentially having a 2-10 record on the season, that's not much of an improvement from 1-11 last year. So for Barry, for Mike Babinski, the AD, something needs to change for this Purdue football program. And I don't really know what it is right now, because they're just outmatched week after week. There is a better slate for you next year in terms of winning games. And that's kind of what you got to look forward to if you're a Purdue football fan, because there's not a lot left this year. You got Washington and Indiana the rest of the way. Indiana is likely going to be a top 2 team going into Ross-Ade. And then Washington should be ranked. They're not, but ultimately Purdue, it's a tough spot. It really is a tough spot for Purdue football. I hope that something changes. I hope that they listen, that this program gets flipped on the head, because Purdue is better when Purdue football is better. I think that this program, there's really a lot to love about Purdue football, and it's sad that they had the season they did this year, especially with the expectations that I had, that a lot of people had with Barry Odom coming in. Just not a lot of progress this year, and you hate to see it. It's kind of a shame, but I mean, it is what it is. We got Purdue basketball. Purdue basketball is here. We got Alabama coming up on Thursday. It's going to be an exciting one, and we're going to be talking that game all week on Locked On Boilermakers. So make sure you guys stick with us. If you guys are just now seeing us, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps us out a ton as we want to continue to bring that daily content to you guys. All the Boilermaker content we can possibly get to y'all. We really appreciate all the support. Thank you for making Locked On Boilermakers your first listen today. For your second listen, consider Locked On Big Ten. Craig Sheeman breaks down the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championships and every game in between. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Of course, it's your team every day. Thank you, guys. And as always, boiler up, hammer down.